Call to order the Monday, June 19th, 2023 meeting of the Wilson School Board to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Here.
Mr. Hart? Mr.
Here.
Hart?
Here.
Mrs. Casper?
Here.
Dr. Kennedy?
Here.
Mr. Martin? Mr. McCray?
Here.
Mr. Negrini?
Here.
Mr. Schneider?
Here.
Mrs. Cocker?
Here.
9 present, 0 absent.
Please stand for the pledge to the flag. This evening, we are going to start with communications, a presentation from Crabtree, Rohrbach and Associates.
Good evening, everyone. I know you have a very long agenda tonight, so I'm going to try to keep it quick and to the point as much as possible. So thank you very much for your time. I'm excited to give you a little update on the new auditorium project that is currently ready to go into the construction documentation phase. And that's our kind of final stretch before we ask you to authorize it to release for bids. So without further ado, what we'll be talking about today is the progress that we've made to date, give you a couple images on both the exterior design and the lobby design. Both have come along quite well, and I'm excited to share with you the renderings that we have prepared for you. Tasks that we have coming up over the next few weeks and months, really what we have to do to get this out to the street and ready for bids. Just a kind of refresher on the schedule and timeline and a little budget estimate update, and then we can open it up for questions. So what have we done since the last time that we met with you? We've pretty much set the layout. In fact, it was set more or less the last time we met too, so it hasn't really changed, except for some minor nuanced things like which storage goes where. We conduct our biweekly coordination meetings with our engineers so that everybody is constantly up on the same page with each other, and we're all making sure that we're getting building systems to work with the architecture and vice versa. We have an acoustical designer, Metropolitan Acoustics, on board, and they are reviewing our design documentation set that we completed a couple weeks ago and are preparing their report based off of those documents so that they can give us their recommendations for the acoustical design in the auditorium. That's important, and I mention that because the images that I'll be showing you tonight are not in the auditorium, and the reason for that is those images will be so contingent on the acoustical features of the space, so we need to get their report in order to produce them. So I'd imagine we'll be meeting with you again to show you the complete design of all of that before we release this for bidding. Land development's moving very well. It was submitted to the township and approved by the township conditionally, subject to their typical requirements, reviews by other agencies having jurisdiction and completion of final paperwork. Berks County Conservation District, it was submitted and it passed through the administrative review and is on to the technical review. So they are doing their thorough technical review for stormwater and other land development matters. So that is tracking very well. We set the auditorium layout for the seating. Currently we're at 1,162 seats, so we're kind of right in that target, well above the 1,100 minimum that we set at the beginning, and a little bit closer to the 1,200 ideal target that we were shooting for. Interiors layouts, we've had meetings with the staff and faculty to make sure that our interiors layouts are what they're looking to have. So everything from instrument storage, the equipment needed in the media and control rooms, things like that. No surprises there since we've been through this before. So we had everything more or less ready to go going into those meetings. So they were very productive. And then all along the way, as always, we continually talk with Dr. Trickett, Jeff Simcox, and other administrators all along the way to continually get feedback from them and raise any items that require their attention. So the site plan is largely as it was before. Of course, we're kind of shoehorning the new addition into the courtyard, which works out quite well. So what you see in the blue on the screen is the new addition footprint of the building. So of course it overlaps a little bit of the existing gymnasium, lobby, and kind of entryway. So as you can imagine, we're doing a little bit of demolition in those areas to accommodate this. But of course, this is a new addition that the lobby serves both spaces very well. So as we presented before, the only parking that we're required to take care of for this version of the project is the accessible parking required for the auditorium. So we're kind of cleaning up the way the accessible parking happens on that access drive, where it currently is probably on slopes that are too steep to actually meet accessibility standards. So we have a small parking lot directly across from the entrance, fully accessible. And then we'll be doing a little bit of stormwater work in the parking lot just due west of that. So we're trying to keep as much of the site disturbance as close to the addition area as possible to keep our site disturbance footprint as minimal as possible. One item that has come up over the past 3 months is where can we send our sanitary sewage? And it was kind of contingent on determining where the sanitary is coming out of the existing building, in particular the classroom wing to the south of it. In short, that sanitary is coming out higher than would work for us to connect into. So, of course, it has to rely on gravity to flow, so we have to send it a little bit further than we had anticipated, which is kind of due north toward the lower house. And it's actually, if you can remember where we were in the previous version of the project, where we were connecting to the lower house with that hallway, it's kind of in that area. So it kind of adds a little bit of site disturbance, about 200 feet to the north. What we'll probably do is just trench open the access drive, probably the east side of it, so that we can put our sanitary piping and do the connection, and then just repave over half of the street. You've seen this diagram before. It hasn't really changed. The yellow is the renovation area, which is, of course, the existing auditorium. So that's going to become the band, corps, and orchestra spaces. And the blue area is the new construction area. So again, we're tracking pretty much the same exact layout as we had before, or excuse me, as we had previously presented the last time that we had met. So no substantive changes to this diagram at this point. And then the same for the floor plan. Band, corps, orchestra, you can see them pretty clearly to the right in the existing auditorium space. And then, of course, the auditorium and the stage in purple on the south side, with supporting spaces for all of them all around. Of course, dressing rooms, costume storage, the control room and media room kind of right behind the stage. Band, corps, and orchestra have storage and practice rooms, all supporting those primary functions. We are doing a little bit of electrical and mechanical work to support the addition space, and that will be roughly located where the existing auditorium lobby is right now. So those are the spaces in brown, kind of to the bottom right of the existing auditorium. And then the scene shop, we're pretty much reusing and expanding the shop as it currently exists right now, which is beneficial so that we can continue the use of the existing loading dock to bring material in, and then it can get worked on in the shop and then get fed straight through overhead doors to the stage. So it's a pretty seamless design in that regard. Any questions about the floor plan while I'm here? Great. This is the seating layout that we've landed upon. We're still making minor adjustments to it. So the seating bulk that you see on the right is the main floor of the auditorium. The seating bulk that you see on the left is the balcony level. So currently there's 206 seats at the balcony level, and then the balance of the 1,162 is downstairs. So a little over 900 downstairs. So this flows really nicely. We've had a lot of discussions about what the best ultimate layout for this would be. We've even looked at ways to maximize it even further, but we've all agreed that to help the flow within the auditorium and be as least disruptive to audience members and keep our aisles as prevalent as possible, this is the ultimate layout that we landed upon. So what's it look like? I have a few images of the exterior design. I think you've seen some massing models that were largely without color to this point, but we started to look at materials and the overall design of the addition. So what you see here is kind of across the access drive, looking at the kind of jewel box lobby design, and then the main entrance. So what we have is a glass curtain wall with undulating, vertically oriented solar shades. Because it faces due west, the vertical orientation of the solar shades is the most effective way to manage the sunlight. You'll see the auditorium bulk is comprised of a masonry material. It's actually ground face concrete masonry units, which is a very cost-effective way to handle the veneer around a pretty large volume space. We were considering other materials such as metal panel, brick, things like that, but one of the concerns, well, two of the concerns, one of course was cost. Metal panel has been coming in quite pricey recently, so in order to keep this as cost effective as possible, we're proposing using a ground face concrete masonry unit. And then two was making the colors work with the existing building around it. So as you can imagine, it's surrounded on three sides by the existing building, which is largely, as I'm sure you're familiar with, like an orangish toned brick. We kind of wanted to stay away from trying to match it for fears that, there's an existing brick that's the classroom wing, and then another existing brick that's the gymnasium wing, and they both went in at different times. They're very similar, they're not the same. So how do we kind of negotiate both of those different types of brick, as well as the other materials that you already have in the building, such as EFIS, exterior insulation facade system, which is kind of that beigey colored stucco looking material. So what we're doing is kind of taking a few of those colors that we can get in a ground face concrete masonry unit, kind of to touch upon or resemble or kind of allude to the existing building materials that you already have, but bring them into the new addition without being a direct emulation. So we're proposing kind of a striped pattern of that to accomplish that goal. Here's another view. So as you move further down, you'll notice that the effect of the solar shades kind of goes away as you move down and you start to be able to see into the space. You can see the auditorium entrance. That's what you see kind of in red inside the quote-unquote jewel box, the lobby area. So in that afternoon sun, it'll really glow, and I think it'll look really, really wonderful. And there's obviously a great opportunity for signage and your logo and other branding items on the wall to the left. Sure.
I love all the natural light, but from like a HVAC perspective, like what kind of addition, like with the sun beating right in there, I mean, exactly.
Yeah, so that's why we use the solar shades, first of all. So they're tilted, they're angled off of the facade to block as much of the sun as possible without totally blocking you out from exterior views. Then, of course, all of that glass is insulated, so it'll be thermally efficient glazing. And then HVAC, they'll want to do wall washes with their air. So we're going to be moving the HVAC out pretty much right up against the glass. And that's pretty common practice. You might even notice that they do that at your house in newer construction houses. And then another view, looking back. One comment that Mr. Simcox made as we were coming in this evening was maybe to bring a little bit of the red into the Bulldog logo, which we could certainly do.
Great, that was going to be my question, just a little pop on the left there. With
Yep.
So that's not locked in, right? I mean,
Not at all.
Great.
Yeah, we'll work with Karen and your whole branding team to get that exactly how you like it. Inside, so this is a view as soon as you walk in the doors, so you can kind of see down the hallway that connects through to the existing building, through the music wing. This is looking a little bit toward the gymnasium side. You can see an area to the left that we're calling Bulldog Events. That's certainly useful from a tickets opportunity, refreshments, and concessions. It could also be during the day where a security outpost is located so that they can monitor who's coming in and out of that entrance during the day. So it works well from a security standpoint too. Trying to bring in a lot of your colors. So what we're proposing is felt material that are acoustical baffles that are the ceiling. So that's what you see up at the top. You see the lighting that we're proposing is kind of emulating that design of the solar shades that's outside. So we're trying to bring that into using a little bit of your accent blue up at what we call the bulkhead up at the top that surrounds the auditorium, and a lot of opportunities for you, again, your branding and your logos. What you see to the right, those 6 screens, that's an opportunity for coming events, who's starring in the next performance, games that are coming up. It could even be used for day-to-day announcements, menu items, things like that. So there's a lot of opportunities to use for those screens. If you look to the right of that of course is where your auditorium entrance is. So we're giving that a lot of pop with the kind of red portal. So then those 3 doors will be where everyone walks into the auditorium, and that's everybody regardless of whether they're sitting upstairs or downstairs. They all enter in the same place. Looking again back at gymnasium entrance in a little more detail. Again, we're trying to bring that same red element to the gymnasium side. And then we're also proposing bringing that Bulldog statue that is currently in the auditorium lobby, bringing that into a display opening that you see there that's kind of trimmed out in a wood-looking material. So we want to bring some of the existing to the new. Related to that, bringing some of the existing to the new, this is what we're proposing as the new Distinguished Alumni Wall, which again is in the existing auditorium lobby. So we're bringing over a concept for the Distinguished Alumni with plenty of room for growth. So that's why you see the panels kind of to the left side of that. They're currently empty, but they would be there for up to 25 years of growth at the rate that we understand you're adding to it. At the very end of that, where the kind of black tile wall turns down, we were proposing bringing over the Fallen Heroes memorial that's located in, again, right at the existing auditorium. So we'll be working with is it current student or alumni who did that? Both. We'll be working with them to get their input on how they would like to see some of those elements brought over. Wonderful. Good. So we're looking forward to those discussions. So those are images of the outside and inside. Again, we're looking forward to producing more images of the auditorium. You remember last time we did a kind of a fly-through video. That's our goal for at the end of this, to be able to show you the same level of work from our end before we send this out to bid. So you get a really comprehensive look at everything before we bid the project. Okay, so coming up, we're going to be continuing into construction documentation, details, details, details. That's what it really amounts to. Of course, that also means building up our specifications books, everything that we need to send this out to bid. We'll be engaging AG Morrow. I've already had a couple discussions with Greg Eckert from AG Morrow, and they developed the door hardware schedule, so we'll be working with all of your existing door hardware systems to tie in the new with the existing seamlessly. Working with Wilson School District Productions and IT staff. In fact, we're already doing so. We've had a meeting with them last week to start talking about all the low voltage items, electrics, PA system, so on and so forth. So we're getting everything in that meets their expectations, and not just currently, but thinking ahead a little bit too, to make sure that we can cover all your bases for the future. Obtain Berks County Conservation District approval. I talked about that already. They're in their review currently for the technical aspect of it. Similarly, we'll want to meet with the code official in the coming weeks, or couple weeks, to get their preliminary review, or I guess more accurately, their eyes on the project, so that we can go over some things that maybe they can see as being issues in the design from a code standpoint. Now's the time to address them. What we don't want to do is send this for their final review sight unseen and end up with comments that, at the 11th hour would be difficult to address. So now's the time to do that, so we'll be doing that soon. Continuing the auditorium design, as I discussed, based on the acoustical report, we'll get the ceilings in. We've kind of had some back and forth with them already to that effect, but also all of the panels that go around the sides for absorption, reflection, diffusion. There's a lot to be considered there, so that will have design impact. With your approval tonight, we'll be continuing on to construction documentation phase. So you'll be voting again in the future to actually release this to bid. And then, of course, when the bids come in, you'll be voting at that point whether or not to accept the bids. So this is just for completion of the construction documentations that you're voting on tonight. You've seen this before. This is our kind of extended schedule out into construction. Pretty much largely unchanged from how I had it before. Although I note under the construction documentations heading that it probably would be good for us to meet again one more time before you vote to release to bid, so that you can have the opportunity to see that final design. So from a construction standpoint, assuming that we can get all the ducks in a row, get the bids out, and they come in favorably, we'll be able to I guess get this under construction by the turn of the year. Looking at about a 20-month duration. We're not phasing the project. With discussions with the administration, we agreed that the best trajectory is to kind of let the contractors hit it all at once. And I think that's a wise decision, especially in light of electrical equipment is still a problem for them to obtain. And when we're phasing projects, that becomes compounded when they're trying to get electrical equipment to bring new addition on, up and online, in an expedited manner, so that they can get to the subsequent phases. That's causing bids to come in on the electrical side quite high, and we're trying to prevent that. So we agreed that doing this as a single phase, they get the construction, the new construction areas and the renovation areas all at one time. So we'll work with the administration, Mr. Simcox, and all parties involved to help them with the logistics of students and staff getting around the construction site. So that's another of the items that we'll be talking about over the coming weeks and months. I've showed this timeline to you before as well. Basically, all I'm showing it again tonight is to show you that basically from the Spring Township standpoint and from the Berks County Conservation District standpoint, we are right where we were targeting to be at this time. So this is all to say that everything is going as planned so far. Regarding the budget, minor change to that. We've seen some projects coming in a little bit higher than we've anticipated over the past few months. So in reflection of that, I've updated the costs of the primes slightly. So the heaviest hitters were general, HVAC, and electrical. I've already mentioned why electrical is still an issue. Their equipment's still a problem, but some of the general contracting work and HVAC work, HVAC's kind of equipment related too, they've been a little bit higher than we've anticipated. Some of those projects were specialty projects, different kind of specialty, but specialty nonetheless, such as, natatoriums. I think as a result of this being kind of a targeted specialty project that is for performing arts and kind of higher performance spaces, it merits the slight increase of those trades. What it amounts to is a total all-in cost estimated today at $22.9 million. When we met last time, it was at 22.27. So, not a tremendous increase, but a slight increase at this point. So the box that you see on the top is that circled in red is the estimated bid date cost. So we're still under $20 million estimated bid date cost. And then the bottom again is, in more detail, the $22.897 million estimated all-in cost. So that all-in cost includes, that estimated all-in cost includes furniture, the professional fees, acoustic engineering, and so on and so forth. Your financing is already in place, so there is no cost for that attributed. So what does your vote mean tonight? It means it authorizes us to proceed into the construction documentation phase. And what that means for our fees is the following. We have set for construction documentation that 35% of our total fee for the entire project is geared toward the construction documentation fee phase. The total project fee is calculated based on the estimated cost of construction-related soft costs. So 4.75% of the estimated 21.126059, and that comes from kind of that blue box between the two red circled ones. That's where that comes from. So 4.75% is the total, all phases, basic services fees. That includes architectural, MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and structural. So that comes out to just over $1 million. 35% of that for the construction documentation phase is just over $350,000. And for your planning purposes, it's easily divided by 3 for the 3-month duration of the phase. So roughly $115,900 for 2 months, and then it's 33%, 33%, 34%, so $119,400 for the final month. The non-basic services for the civil engineering and acoustical engineering are billed separately by those engineers. The civil by K&W, we just pass that through. They send it to us. We just pass it through to you without markup. That's all based on work commensurate with, billed based on commensurate with the work performed to date for them. So I think to summarize it easily, it's similar to what we're doing for the basic services. You could imagine that it's maybe a third of the project for construction documentation. They'll be doing similarly, probably on a monthly basis. So we'll just pass them on along to you. And that's it. Questions?
Sean, I just want to thank you and appreciate all your work, and also adding that last slide that came out of the committees, or the facility committee meeting, where the public and the board did know about the phases and the costs. I just wanted to make sure that the public was aware of them and the investment our school's making to continue this project forward. So I appreciate that. Looks great.
Okay.
Great, I agree. Thank you, Sean, for your time.
Thank you.
And for presenting, and it looks wonderful. It's really exciting.
Very excited, and I'm looking forward to showing you more later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next portion of our meeting, Mr. Maravich, we do have public participation on agenda items. If you would be so kind as to go over our announcement.
Thank you. Pursuant to the Sunshine Law, Robert's Rules, and Board Policy, the following are the rules of public participation. Individuals attending this meeting are expected to conduct themselves in a responsible and respectful manner that does not disrupt the meeting. Public can comment is not question and answer, but instead an opportunity to offer comment on matters that are or may come before the board, and particular personnel or student matters may not be commented on because even if the employee, parent, or student is speaking due to confidentiality laws. As it relates to questions, the superintendent may assign an administrator to speak directly to the speaker, or may attempt to speak to the speaker after the meeting to answer any such questions. Board respectfully requests that you direct your comments to the board as a body, as it is the board that needs to consider each of your comments and future votes. Clapping, calling out, or cheering is not permitted, nor are conversations. Individuals should not approach the board tables. Individuals should make their comments from the speaker's lectern. Comments are 3 minutes, and I'll try to give a 1-minute warning that does not disrupt you. Any person making threats of violence may be removed from the meeting or cited by local police. These expectations are outlined in Board Policy 903, which is embedded on board docs included on the Wilson website.
Thank you, Mr. Maravich. First, we have Tony DiGirolamo, budget agenda item.
Hello, everyone. I'm getting to know all you people coming to these meetings. I'm just here to talk about the budget that we have coming up to approve tonight. And, you know, when you look at the thing, the short story is you got flat revenue and you're up $8 million in spending. So it looks pretty bad, but I guess I'm kind of more of an analytical person, a CFO in my past life, and I try to look at things and try to understand where the real opportunity might be in the budget at this late stage to try to do anything to change it. Revenues are down. Even though you got a 2.9% tax increase, you also have $2 million lost in COVID funds and some settlements you got last year that were pretty favorable that helped you to keep a higher number and only be able to keep it flat. Your spending is up $8 million, but as you look at that, I say, well, you know, $7 million is payroll and benefits, and you got about $4 million that's in there due to already negotiated pay increases and salary adjustments and things like that. So you only have really, and there's another $1 million of other spending that's largely due to inflation. So, you know, I see that maybe there would have been $3 million of opportunity in the budget, primarily from not adding people like you did last year. You couldn't fill the positions fast enough, so you came up $2 million favorable to your budget. Well, if you can't hire them again this year fast enough, maybe that's an opportunity. So, but really, when you're right on top of this situation like this, there's not a lot you can do. I think that what you do is a long-term kind of thing. The decisions you make today going forward are the things that are really going to give you controllability of the budgets in the future. You know, when you're at this stage, you don't have that much opportunity to do it. So as I look ahead, I see these projections that have been out there for 4% millage increases every year to 2028, 19% tax increase over that time, and running $4 million in deficits, draining the coffers every year for about $22 million. It's not a good picture, and it's one that you'd really like to change if you could. If you were a profit-making organization or a nonprofit, you couldn't live that way. You know, you'd have to do something to increase revenues. A minute, okay. So anyway, you've got a lot of money that you're looking at spending. You borrowed the $48 million, I believe. So unlike what was said before about the financing cost being in it, it's not really there. You got about $11 million in financing. Every year in that budget, $11 million is going out the door to pay for that debt service. So, one of the things you can do is really look at that spending. I thought that was a terrific-looking center that you were looking at before, but you've got that, and you're talking about elementary schools and some things. What you do there is something that you can do that will affect these budgets significantly, these projections in the future. So I just want to see that's being looked at, that you care about what's going on with the taxpayers as part of it, because we're kind of defenseless. And you got a revenue source that you just say, gimme. So I'd like to see that you think about us, when you make those calls. So that's all I had.
Thank you for your comments. Next, Chastity Santiago, agenda item Costello Educational Consulting.
So, thank you for setting me up there. I was looking over the agreement with the Costello Educational Consulting team, and I have a few concerns when I read it. I didn't see any requirements of the contract or agreement focused on contractual outcomes. I didn't see any indicators tied to expected outcomes. Didn't see any achievable performance standards tied to those indicators that don't exist, obviously. And I didn't see any specifics on how to collect, analyze, and report the necessary data. The current language there is very vague. I also didn't see any caps related to the number of consultants that can be billed at the estimated 3 days per month. The language doesn't specify outside of 3 days per month. So, it makes a big difference if it's one consultant for those 3 days at $75 an hour or 6 consultants at 3 days at $75 an hour. That makes a big difference to the taxpayers. So in an effort to avoid misinformation, I want to be very clear. I'm in no way questioning the need for these services. I'm questioning entering into an agreement without effort made to incorporate specific language related to measuring the effectiveness of services delivered. If I handed this contract to my boss, I would be laughed at and told to leave her office. I've worked on multiple government contracts during my career, and all of them have included performance-based languages for services being delivered. The taxpayers of this district should expect the very same of their elected school board officials. The agreement is focused on input and service delivery. It lacks motivation and works in favor of the service provider versus the district. It's akin to you paying your water bill, but you not having water for the entire month. You'd still have to pay it if you sign this contract. This agreement is also not a reflection of the data-driven decision-making we're told that occurs with our district. Improving student outcomes means voting no tonight and putting measures in place to ensure all contracted service agreements are based on performance to improve student outcomes. There are many of us in this community who have a great amount of experience in that area, and I'm sure more than happy to help you out if you need it. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. That's the end of public participation on agenda items. The board met in executive session prior to tonight's meeting to discuss personnel matters. Looking for approval of minutes from the school board meeting held on June 5th, 2023.
Schneider.
Mr. Schneider, thank you. Mr. Negrini, second. Any comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Under Finance, 3.1, request approval of the 2023-24 general fund budget, providing for expenditures of $133 million with tax on real estate of 29.49 mils, an increase of 0.83 mils or 2.9% over the current year millage. 3.2, request approval of the tax resolution for the 2023-24 fiscal year as presented. 3.3, request approval of the homestead and farmstead exclusion resolution for 2023-24 as presented. 3.4, request approval of the resolution ratifying tax assessment appeals as presented. 3.5, request approval of district liability insurance premiums totaling $756,913 for the 2023-24 fiscal year as recommended by the district insurance broker, Tompkins Insurance. 3.6, request approval to transfer the $76,000 propane school bus conversion state grant received to the Capital Reserve Fund. 3.7, request approval of amendment to renew the district photography services agreement with Searfoss Images LLC through June 30th, 2026, pending final solicitor review and approval. 3.8, request approval to submit all unpaid 2022 per capita bills to statewide tax recovery, subject to payments collected through June 15th, 2023. 3.9, requests permission to submit 6 delinquent accounts to the Berks County Tax Claim Bureau. 3.10, request approval of the budget transfers dated May 11th, 2023 through June 9th, 2023 as attached. Looking for motion to approve finance agenda items 3.1 through 3.10.
So moved, Negrini.
Mr. Negrini, thank you. Looking for a second.
McCray.
Mr. McCray, thank you. Any discussion? Mr. Negrini?
Thank you. Obviously, this time of year is always a challenge for school districts in passing a budget, understanding the implications of those decisions on the taxpayers, those decisions on students, those decisions on staff. And so, it is a long process, and I just want to share my appreciation of Mrs. Schlossman and her staff in working through this month-long process, administration, in their efforts to try to find ways to address what the primary function of a school district is to educate our students, but also be mindful of our responsibility as board members, as elected officials, of fiscal responsibility. And I recognize that word or that term can mean different things to different individuals depending upon perspective. And rather than get deep into philosophical discussion about that, I can say, being on the board as long as I have been, and being mindful of people in this community that I've known my entire life that are in different financial situations. My parents are retired or on fixed income, still live in Cornwall Terrace, as they have for the last 40-some years, more than that. And I appreciate what Tony had to say and keeping that in perspective with our decisions. The thing I would point out is the difference between budgets with profits or nonprofit entities and education, public education, is that there are many required mandates that put school districts and boards in passing budgets in a position where because we are legally obligated to meet certain things passed by both our federal and state government, that is the biggest difference in looking at ways where we can find savings, where we can find ways to keep spending at a reasonable rate year after year, and knowing that year after year, as some of those costs continue to increase, that we have no say in limiting or, especially as we point year after year. One example was special education costs that has remained flat, funded from a state standpoint, but we've increased significantly over the last 20 years, and certainly as long as I've been on the board. And then I've also, the last couple of final budgets, talk about things that are discretionary within a school district, that things that we are not required to spend money on, but perhaps there are certainly benefits outside of the fixed goals that are measurable data points that our students here at Wilson have had the benefit of being involved with year after year. Arts and music and foreign languages, the BCTC. Transportation is not something that is required of the district to provide extracurriculars. So I point out that with this proposed final budget, the costs of some of these discretionary expenditures, such as art, the salaries and benefits, and non-salaries and benefits for all in throughout the district of our art program is $1.2 million, or 0.5 mils. All in with music, again, salaries and benefits, 2.3 million, or 0.89 mils. Foreign languages, 1.8 million, or 0.69 mils. We have paraprofessionals working in our classrooms that adds a benefit to not only our students, but certainly and arguably makes our classroom teachers better at what they do. $1.1 million, or 0.45 mils. BCTC, approximately 1.1 million, or 0.43 mils. Transportation, 4.2 million, or 1.63 mils. And then all in with our extracurricular clubs, et cetera, $3 million, or 1.18 mils. So knowing that most of our budget is salaries, benefits, and such, it is a point of great discussion and debate that we can have year after year about what we should or should not provide to the district. And again, open to any suggestions or recommendations from the community, from taxpayers, from parents, from staff. But those are some real numbers. Those are some real ways to find savings, to obviously keep at a minimum or perhaps not increase taxes year after year. Again, that is a decision from feedback from the community that would then impact ultimately goals of the board, whether currently or future boards, and certainly current or future administrations. So again, I don't like making decisions that impact significantly the bottom line of folks. That every dollar counts in every household, but recognizing that there is a balance that we have to walk as elected officials to meet both those fiscal responsibilities of our community and yet provide an education that, in my opinion, and our goal is always to improve upon where we were previously. So for those reasons, I am supportive of this year's proposed final budget, and I wish folks the best that fills my seat next year in doing this, because it's not easy, and it's not going to get any easier. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Negrini. Any other comments?
Yes, this is Mike. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Martin, go ahead.
Yes. A couple things. About 3 months ago, I spoke to Christine, and I told her if she can get the increase below 3%, that I would vote positively for this. With that said, there's a couple things in the budget that I believe are questionable, but I will honor my word and vote yes for this. With that said, one more time, I do believe, since this budget is based on a budget from the state that's going to be greatly exceeded, we did the same thing that Jay and I did last year, that the budget amount that we have in there from the state allocation, the amount that succeeds that amount, we should rebate back to the taxpayers as we did this year. So I think that should be a policy we should think about. That I know the state is not good at passing budgets, And if they would, we wouldn't have this question. We would know how much money we'd be getting. But we're going to get substantially more than what we budgeted for in income. So I would hope that we can do as we did this year and reduce next year's taxes by that windfall that we're getting. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Any other discussion from the board?
I would just echo a lot of what Mr. DeGreeny said, and he said a lot more eloquently and with a lot more data than I would. But it is a tremendous effort by Mrs. Schlossman and her team that occurs every year. Anybody who has the joy of attending all the finance meetings that occur throughout the year, you can see all the detail and effort. I guess maybe I'll challenge Mrs. Schlossman to maybe this coming year keep track of how many different revisions occur in the budget. I'm sure it's probably in the hundreds as we go through the planning process, and new ideas and thoughts are brought, across the administration, all the way down to the building level, all the way down to the administration, to the department head level, and even further. I think we are doing a good job. We're going to vote on some items later in the meeting tonight about new revenue opportunities for the district, taking advantage of some facilities that we have that are in demand by other entities within the community. So I think we're always open to additional ideas to increase revenue, but also, most importantly, maintain the quality of the product that we provide to this district, to the society, to the children that we're required to educate. So again, I would just thank Mrs. Schlossman for her team and all the administration for the effort that's put forward here to get to where we are tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. McCray. Any other comments from the board? Okay, having a motion and second. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Section 4 of Finance, request permission to receive the nomination of Board Treasurer for the July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024 term, just for the ability to receive the nomination. So looking for a motion for 4.1.
Motion to approve, Sean McCray.
Thank you, Mr. Negrini. We have a motion for Mr. McCray. Do we have any other nominations? Okay, do we have a second for Mr. McCray? Dr. Kennedy, thank you. Any discussion? Okay. Roll call, please, on 4.1.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Abstain?
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
8 yes, 1 abstain.
Now, 4.2, request approval to hold the election. So that was, reminder, 4.1 is just to receive the nomination, which we received. Now is to actually nominate, permission to receive the nomination for, or to hold the election for Mr. McCray. So this is official. Mr. McCray is our only nomination. Looking for motion to approve 4.2. Okay, well, let's do 4.2 and 4.3 together. Okay, sure. So let's do 4.2, 4.3, and 4.4 for the zero salary, Mr. McCray. Sorry about that. I know it's a lot of time and energy. Yeah.
It is a dream job, yes.
So looking to request approval for 4.2 through 4.4.
Schneider.
Mr. Schneider, thank you. Looking for a second.
Negrini, second.
Mr. Negrini, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Abstain?
Mr. Negrini,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes.
Mr. Case,
Yes.
Mr. Hart,
Yes.
Mrs. Casper,
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker.
Yes.
8 yes, 1 abstain.
Congratulations, Mr. McRae, and thank you for being willing to take that position. Yeah, right. Yes, salary should be first and then nominations. Moving on to Human Resources, 5.1, request approval of the attached MOU between the association, the district, and an employee. 5.2, request approval of support staff rates for the 2023-24 school year. 5.3, request approval of support staff compensation ranges for the 2023-24 school year. 5.4, request approval of administrative rates for the 2023-24 school year. 5.5, request approval of the attachment contract for PSBA Insurance Trust for Better Unemployment Compensation System Basic Program, pending solicitor review. 5.6, request approval of the attached contract with Inroads at Family Guidance Center for Wilson School District Employee Assistance Program, pending solicitor review. 5.7, request approval of the amended job descriptions for Supervisor of Data Systems, Senior Technology Data Specialist, and Technology Data Specialist. And 5.8, request to authorize the superintendent to make employment commitments to qualified applicants for the purpose of filling vacancies that occur after the June 19th, 2023 board meeting, with the action to be ratified by the school board at the next official meeting. Looking for a motion to approve Human Resources items 5.1 through 5.8.
Hart, so moved.
Mr. Hart, thank you. Looking for a second.
Casper.
Mrs. Casper, thank you. Any discussion? Mr. Hart, I believe you,
I do.
yes, thank you.
I just want to thank the administration, the HR department, and all the administrative team that has worked on these over the past several months and year. These support staff rates are well overdue, well needed, and well deserved. So it's nice that it's finally being taken care of. It's a shame that it's taken us so long, but kudos to the board, to the district for doing that. So again, for the great job that all our support staff does every day to help contribute to what we do best for our children. So thank you, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Any other discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. McCrae,
Yes.
Mr. Negrini,
Yes.
Mr. Schneider,
Yes.
Mr. Case,
Yes.
Mr. Hart,
Yes.
Mrs. Casper,
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker,
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Under Operations, 6.1, request approval to upgrade the rear lights at Wilson High School Campus Drive from Grandview Boulevard down to the lower house and the locker facilities building under CoStars. Total cost, $55,048.50 using capital funds. 6.2, request approval of installation of operable wall in the high school library by CoStars. Total cost of $47,846 using capital funds. 6.3, request approval of a facilities rental agreement with the LCBC Church for use of Wilson West Middle School Auditorium and designated classroom spaces for weekly Sunday gatherings beginning November 5th, 2023 through July 28th, 2024, under the terms and conditions provided in Board Policy Number 707, for a total of $2,500 per day, inclusive of rental fees and custodial costs as attached. 6.4, requests approval to authorize and to engage Crabtree, Rohrbach and Associates to complete the final design and construction phase of architectural services for the comprehensive additions and renovations for the Wilson High School. 6.5, request approval to purchase accessible musical playground equipment from River Valley Landscapes using capital reserve funds at a total cost of $119,148, inclusive of shipping and installation with prevailing wage rates as presented. 6.6, request approval to renew contract with KRE for security for nighttime coverage pending solicitor review. And 6.7, request to renew the contract with Made to Be Clean for custodial services pending solicitor review. Looking for a motion to approve operations items 6.1 through 6.7.
So moved. Case?
Mr. Case, thank you. Do we have a second?
Negrini, second.
Mr. Negrini, thank you. Any discussion?
I just wanted to talk a little bit about the playground equipment. This came up in the Facilities Committee that just happened last week. This was in our capital project for the site prep, some of the dollars that are now being moved to get all the equipment equal throughout all the elementary schools for Wilson. Green Valley has some of this equipment today. There was talk about expanding it to 3 more elementary schools, with 1 being left out. So at the facilities committee, we're just going to make it equal across the board. Any future, so the site prep is going to have, so basically those funds were going to be taken care of for the equipment here. The site prep will be done in-house, and then any future expansion of any of the playgrounds will be looked at for fundraising projects going forward. So I just wanted to put that in there, that it truly is a community effort on this. The students that are able to use this equipment, both from autism, and special needs students to all children, it's well worth it in the long run for the sites. And then also just, because a couple of big dollar items here, the LED lighting, typically when you go to LED lighting, you get the savings over a certain amount of years for replacement. Those are replacements of the LED lighting heads. And then the library wall to be put in place will be able to be extend our library for additional classroom space with a soundproof wall. So, and then the construction documentation project is in there as well. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to raise them.
Thank you, Mr. Case. Any other discussion? Mr. Greenie?
Just briefly, as throughout the year, obviously, when there are matters before the board for a vote with spending out of capital reserve, I just wanted to point out that the average 12-year capital spend is about $2.6 million per year. And over that same 12-year period from budget transfers, we transfer in about $1.9 million per year in from the general fund. So that again is part of the equation with the budget process and planning out for capital projects. I believe we're going to be voting, I believe, in the future about a proposed 3 or 5 year plan with capital expenditures as well. So I just point that out in terms of what is budgeted for these expenses with all of our facilities and things that need maintenance or upgrades. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Negrini. Any other discussion on operations items 6.1 through 6.7? Okay, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Treasurer's report, Mr. McCray.
Yes, motion to approve the treasurer's report, investment report, and general and capital funds financial reports as presented.
Thank you, Mr. McCray. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Greenie, second.
Mr. Negrini, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Payment of bills, Mr. Negrini.
Thank you. Motion to approve the payment of bills from the following: the general fund, $3,171,081.81. From capital reserve, a whopping $106.21. And from the 2021 C construction fund, $131,200.33 as attached.
Thank you, Mr. Negrini. We have a motion. Do we have a second for 8.1?
McCray.
Mr. McCray, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Abstain.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
8 yes, 1 abstain.
Financial reports, Mr. Negrini.
Thank you. Motion to approve the financial reports for the month of May, and I believe it should be, okay, yeah, I saw the update. For the May of 2023, the cafeteria, childcare, and activity accounts from Southern, West, and the senior high school as attached.
Thank you, Mr. Negrini. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
McCray.
Mr. McCray, thank you. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy? Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Superintendent's report, Dr. Trickett.
Thank you, President Cocker. I present items 10.1 through 10.6, inclusive of all items under the superintendent's report. This time of year is still a busy time of year within the HR department and for our team, highlighted by still some folks that are moving on, starting new careers outside of the Wilson School District, some folks that are retiring, quite a few change of status items listed here, people changing roles within the school district, different grades, different roles, serving. These are not new people necessarily, they're people that are just switching their primary job function. Quite a lengthy list there. Again, happy to report that we have quite a few professional hires. Mrs. Doutrick is here. Mr. Underwood is here. If you could just wave to us, please. Mr. Underwood will be joining us as a health and physical educator over at West Middle School. Mrs. Doutrick, I think she waved. I didn't see her. There she is. Thank you. Will be joining our high school team as a career counselor. Career counselor is one of the positions that we implemented or will be implementing for the 23-24 school year with a specific focus on helping us achieve some of our career readiness goals. This is a brand-new position with a more intensive focus. It's more comprehensive than that, but just wanted to highlight the role she's going to serve for our community and our high school. So welcome to both of you. Welcome everyone else that's not here tonight, but always since you're here, I want to make sure that I give you a personal welcome. So welcome to the family, and we look forward to working with you to help us achieve our goals. That's my report.
Thank you, Dr. Trickett. Looking for a motion to approve superintendent's items 10.1 through 10.6.
Schneider, so moved.
Mr. Schneider, thank you. Dr. Kennedy, second. Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Consent items, 11.1. So tonight's agenda is longer than usual, and the donations are also longer than usual. So we're very happy to say that and accept with gratitude the following donations. From Wilson Education Foundation, $500 to be used for the High School Art Show Awards winners. From Pediatric Dentistry of Reading PC, $494.58 for the Shiloh Hills Ice Cream Social. Mr. Robert Chappell, $1,000 to the Grandview Gallery to use at the director's discretion. Wilson Education Foundation, $500 to the Wilson School District in support of the Reading Symphony Orchestra trip on 3/2/23. From Wilson Southern Middle School Student Council Dances and Fundraisers, $2,000 donation for Wilson Southern Middle School Field Day. And from the Wilson Education Foundation, $5,000 to be used towards the fireworks display at the 2023 graduation ceremony. Looking for a motion to accept with gratitude the consent items for 11.1.
So moved. Case?
Mr. Case, thank you. Do we have a second?
Schneider.
Mr. Schneider, thank you. Any discussion?
Just to obviously thank everyone that's donated. It really says a lot about the community, former teachers that are coming back and donating, the Education Foundation, which is through the businesses of this community. We have a real special place here at Wilson with this list so large, so thank you.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you, Mr. Case. Okay, having a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Under Student Services, 12.1, request permission to enter the names of the 2023 Wilson graduates into the permanent minutes as attached. 12.2, request permission to enroll one foreign exchange student for the 2023-24 school year. 12.3, request permission to enter into an agreement with Billings Bilingual LLC to provide English-Spanish document translation services beginning July 1st, 2023, ending June 30th, 2024, as presented. 12.4, request permission to contract with Cottage 7 for one special education student for the 2023-24 school year at a cost of $215 per day, or $38,700, beginning July 1st, 2023, and ending May 31st, 2024, pending solicitor review and approval. 12.5, request permission to contract with John Paul II for one special education student for ESY 2023 at a cost of $3,000 for the full ESY term beginning June 19th, 2023 through August 3rd, 2023, pending solicitor review and approval. 12.6, request permission to enter into a service agreement with Costello Educational Consulting to provide professional development to learning support teachers through summer in-service and monthly early dismissal instructional strategy sessions with follow-up classroom support at a cost of $600 per consultant, $300 for half days per consultant, and $75 for hourly rates beginning July 31st, 2023, and ending June 30th, 2024, as presented. 12.7, request permission to contract with Royer Greaves School for the Blind for 2023 extended school year services for one special education student at a cost of $494 per day for 23 days, one-to-one aid at a cost of $231 per day for 23 days, beginning June 26, 2023, and ending July 28, 2023. Transportation will be provided by the district as presented. 12.8, request approval of a resolution to appoint Sweet Stevens, Katz, and Williams as special counsel for special education legal services with hourly rates as listed in the fee agreement as presented. Looking for a motion to approve student service items 12.1 through 12.8. Dr. Kennedy, thank you.
Casper.
Mrs. Casper is a second. Any discussion? Mr. Negrini?
Go ahead, Mr. Martin.
Oh, yes. On 12.6, I was listening to the our local community person. Can we table that until we get more information from administration?
We can provide that information right now at the podium if that's permissible.
Yeah, I think that's what I was going to suggest, if you could speak to the points that Ms. Santiago had raised and have some further explanation from our solicitor about the contract. I would assume that there's no obligation for us to continue on with services if we believe that the company that is providing the consultation has met the district's needs, and, where we envision that overall cost to look like for the district. So if we can hear more about that this evening, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, I'd prefer to do it now if we can, just due to the gap in between our board meetings. So Joni Lefevre will come to the podium.
Hi, can you hear me? So this is a service agreement, and what it is, when we need the services, that's what it's for. So teacher professional development or on-site coaching. Our special education teachers are being trained in a variety of research-based programs. Just to give you an example, strategic instruction model. They were trained by the University of Kansas. They're getting trained in other research-based writing programs. So this is really to support our teachers and, again, focus on student achievement. As these teachers are learning these research-based programs, what they have to focus on is delivering that replacement instruction while ensuring that our students are still accessing the general education curriculum. It's a balancing act. So we want to ensure that once our teachers are trained in these programs, that they have the necessary support to deliver these programs with fidelity. When looking at Costello Consulting, there's a handful of teachers that we're really focusing on, again, to build capacity within the district, develop those teacher leaders so that they can help others in the district. So again, it's a service agreement, and you will be billed as we use the services. Like hopefully, if there's in-servicing time and they need like an hour of coaching, or if they want somebody to come in and model how to deliver this particular instruction. That's the way we envision this. We don't envision the this being a long-term, prospect. And our teachers are so efficient and effective, I think they're going to take the training that we have and really do a wonderful job to support our students.
One of the things that we, from time to time, do vote upon is settlements with special education claims. Do you believe, based upon the information that Costello has provided to other districts locally or throughout the region, this will in some way, from a measurable standpoint, help the district provide the necessary services for our special education students so that we can avoid perhaps the more costlier settlements that sometimes come about because the districts can't provide the services that is necessary.
Yes, and that's always my focus. Again, my focus is on our student and student achievement and providing the best programs that we can so that our students can achieve their goals, whatever their goals may be. So looking at when you have teachers who are trained in programs, can deliver strong instruction, and you have fidelity of programming, fidelity in the IEP, to your point, yes, that will reduce some of those challenges that come against it. But, putting students and money and legal in the same sentence is often a complicated conversation, but really our goal is to provide the best program for our students, whatever it is that they need, to ensure that they're making meaningful and adequate progress on their IEP goals.
And then to the point that Ms. Santiago brought up, how do we measure those goals?
So when we're looking at student data. We're looking at IEP progress monitoring data. We're looking at grades. We're looking at scores on how they're doing on local assessments. We're looking at scores on how they do on state assessments. We're looking at attendance, and we're looking at discipline data. And those are the things that, as educators, we're always looking at, and those indicators help us see, are we meeting our goals to get our students where they need to be? And that is something in our conversations with Costello that we had to make sure that if we were going to enter into this arrangement, are we getting what we need? And, are we improving? Which is always the goal in education.
So for next year, if this does come before the board to renew the contract, I would hope that we would be able to present some data showing the growth from this.
I live in data.
All right.
Yes, we could absolutely do that.
Okay, thank you.
Just a question with regard to,
Dad,
just
Mr.
with,
Martin.
with regard to new teachers versus seasoned teachers, special education teachers, do you find a difference at all where, is there a breakdown in higher education where you'd go back to school or college for this type of training, or you have to go to a company like this?
So we work with a lot of partners. It depends on what we want. So for example, SIM's strategic instruction model, that's a fantastic program. It has 45 years of research behind it, and it has been proven. So for that, we had to go to the University of Kansas because there's no local provider who can do that. For a lot of these programs, we're working with the IU14 to give us training. So when we can't get what we need, we go to outside sources. We're looking at Montgomery County IU to provide some training for us. But again, it's making sure that our teachers have a broad continuum, of programs so that whatever learner comes to them, they're able to meet their needs and deliver the IEP as outlined. So we're trying to build that capacity within teachers so that they have a strong toolbox, so that if one program that they're doing is not working, that they're able to go and rely on something else to ensure that they're getting the data and the students making progress. So my goal is right now, in working with my team and, with the support of Dr. Hoffert and other administrators, we're really looking to grow those research-based programs and continue to develop that at K-12. And that's why having Costello come in and support our teachers so that they have fidelity and are competent in that program, and then they can train others in their building. And then that success just keeps building upon itself.
this is Mike. How many school districts in our county use this company?
So right now, not in this area. Hempfield is using them. We spoke to folks in the Solanco district. They've been using them. So they're kind of broad, and both of these ladies have over 35 years, in teaching. So they are, well-seasoned educators.
So how did you find out about this company? I mean, what was it in an article? Was it from another school district? I'm just curious how this company was chosen.
I actually did not know they were doing this. These are former educators. They were former consultants, former reading specialists, writing content specialists, former trainers in a district that I used. I did not know after they had retired that they actually went into developing this consulting firm. Erin Squibb, who is one of the supervisors of special ed, in making her connection, she found them. And that was really why we met with them and had a long conversation and explained to them what our vision was and what our vision was for Wilson, and could they help us, meet the targets that we've set for the department.
And one final question. I don't know how, you talk about data-driven, I don't know how you're going to be able to present this in a year. I mean, there's so many variables with special education. I'm not sure you'll be able to determine whether this program was successful or not. What specifically is going to make this successful in your eyes?
So if you look at this, we're looking specifically at students in learning support programs, students with learning disabilities, and we're focusing on reading and writing, and that data is actually easy for us to get. We can look at the progress monitoring data, we can look at student grades, we can look at PSSA scores, how some of these students are achieving on those state assessments. We can also look at local data, how they're performing. So it is really easy for us to grab that data and see how the students are performing, because we know specifically the teachers and the classrooms that we're going to be looking at.
Okay, I find it's still going to be difficult because of all the variables, but are you going to do like a sample set that you're going to take, I'm making a number up, of course, 30 students and apply this knowledge and see how they improve versus 30 that have not had this experience? I'm just really trying to grasp how you're going to quantify this.
Yes, for those students who, I screamed into this, sorry about that. Yes, for those students who are receiving that replacement instruction, we would have a set number of students that we could look at to see how they're performing. Number one, using the programs that we have and how they're scoring, on the assessments.
Okay.
The only other piece I would add to Mrs. Lefevre is, obviously talking to our professional educators too, about their experience with this coaching and the training throughout the summer and throughout our early dismissal days of professional learning time. It's just another tool for our toolbox. That's really what the service agreement is. It's not necessarily stating that we're contracting for X amount of hours. It's a tool when needed to bring in another group of people who specialize in this particular skill set with students with learning disabilities. One of the things that our team has talked about this year, we are a large school district in this region, comparably, with nearly 20% of our students being identified as needing some type of special services and special education. So when we program, we need to make sure we have a variety of different options at our discretion. So while Mr. Negrini's initial question is hard to put all those pieces together, it's another tool to help us meet the needs of children. And I do believe our staff, too, could offer some perspective on if they found that the training is helpful and giving them more tools to deliver the instruction they have to deliver. So, thank you.
One last question. Do they have all the insurance that are required? Have we checked all that stuff out?
Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Martin. Anyone we would bring in to work with our children would go through the same comprehensive process.
All right, thank you.
I do have all those documents, all of their clearances and the required documents necessary to be in the district and to be with children.
Including the insurance indemnification.
I didn't hear that.
Mr. Martin, could you repeat that last statement?
Yes, I'm sorry. Including the insurance required for liability insurance and indemnification.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say how much I appreciate the idea of a tool in your toolbox. I think having the opportunity to work with many districts, one of the things that I see that's kind of not helpful is when administration comes in and they think this is going to fix everything. And that is really what's going on in education right now, especially in literacy, is that there's certain groups of people who think you should only teach phonics, you should only teach all. We need as many tools in our toolboxes as possible. And to Mr. Case's point, you got 4 years in education, and there's just not enough time. And I can tell you, there were things that existed when I was an undergraduate that didn't exist when I was an undergraduate that I learned. For example, running records. I tell my kids all the time, we spend 6 weeks learning about how to code student reading. Guys, this didn't exist. I learned from Dr. Roberts here when I taught second grade at Wilson. So education, people that aren't in education don't understand how fluid and how changing and how research-based, research changes all the time and it informs our instruction. So, I also like to think of the idea how you make teachers leaders, and then they go out and teach everyone. It reminds me of reading recovery. Reading recovery is one really fabulous way that we have to teach teachers about literacy, how students learn how to read. We've always committed to teaching, to have a reading specialist go through reading recovery training. We also used to do it to at least 1 or 2 of the first grade teachers in the building. And I can tell you, I have benefited from the knowledge of Steph Mays, who was in first grade, was a first grade teacher and reading recovery trained. And from my reading specialist as well. So anytime you put a good idea in a teacher, we can't help it. We go out and we tell everyone how great this is. And the idea of education is you have to match that assessment, that data, to the learner. So if you have a student who has auditory processing disorder, you're not going to give them the same instruction as a student who has dyslexia. And that's part of the tricky part about being an educator, and especially a special educator. How do you differentiate that instruction and meet the needs of each individual learner? And having as many tools in your toolbox is the best way to do that.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments. And just a final note, we have some amazing teachers in this district, and they're just so ready to start and get going. I'm really excited to see where all of this is going to go. They really do a wonderful job, and they're working with wonderful students, so thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lefevre. Any other discussion on student service items 12.1 through 12.8? Okay, hearing none, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes,
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Under Technology and Media, 13.1, request approval to purchase Mitel voice switches using capital funds for a total cost of $78,559 as attached. Looking for a motion for 13.1.
McCray.
Mr. McCray, thank you. Do we have a second?
Schneider.
Mr. Schneider, thank you. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
yes,
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
14.1, curriculum and staff development. Request approval of the affiliation agreement between Shippensburg University and Wilson School District. Looking for a motion for 14.1. Dr. Kennedy, do we have a second?
Schneider.
Mr. Schneider, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
yes,
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Under Transportation, 15.1, request approval of a revenue rideshare contract with Governor Mifflin School District for the transportation of up to 2 Governor Mifflin students to and from Capstone Academy in East Norriton, PA, at a rate of $174.66 per school day for the 2023 ESY program, based on actual number of days transported. Looking for a motion for 15.1.
So moved, Negrini.
Mr. Negrini, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second, Case.
Mr. Case, thank you. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Under Food and Cafeteria, 16.1, request approval of the 2023-24 food service budget in the amount of $4,882,693 as attached. 16.2, request approval of meal prices for the 2023-24 school year with a 5-cent increase to breakfast and lunch prices as noted below. Looking for a motion for food cafeteria items 16.1 and 16.2.
So moved, Negrini.
Mr. Negrini, thank you. Looking for a second.
McCray.
Mr. McCray, thank you. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that with the breakfast prices, that's under the assumption, I guess, that the state would end the free breakfast program, and that cost would be implemented at that time.
Correct.
Yes, that's correct, or
Yeah.
for students who would choose to purchase an additional.
Right.
Right, because high school kids get like 3 meals. So. All right, so we have a motion and a second for food cafeteria items 16.1 with 16.2. Any other discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. McCray?
Yes.
Mr. Negrini?
Yes.
Mr. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Case?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mrs. Casper?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mrs. Cocker?
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Miscellaneous enrollment report. As of June 15th, 2023, our enrollment is 6,418 students, which is a decrease of 1 from the previous report on May 11th, 2023. On to committee reports, BCTC and Student Services, Mrs. Casper.
Thank you, President Cocker. Neither committee has met since my last report, so I have no report for either one.
Thank you, Mrs. Casper. BCIU and Curriculum Committee, Dr. Kennedy.
Thank you. The curriculum committee has not met since our last meeting. The BCIU met last Thursday. Some of the highlights from the BCIU was they had their Project Search graduation, which is for students at the Penn State St. Joseph Medical Center. It's an internship program for young adults with disabilities. They also had the Paraprofessional Academy graduation. That is where paraprofessionals graduate from training at the Berks County Intermediate Unit. 29 participants, 29 paraprofessionals participated in the academy. And they had their 9th annual Re-envisioning Teaching and Learning Conference, and they heard a keynote address, Meaningful and Relevant, How to Engage Learners in an Era of Distraction, which I personally thought was spot on. And that is it for my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kennedy. Berks EIT, Mrs. Schlossman. Extracurricular Committee, we met this afternoon at noon. The majority of our time, first, I don't know if facilities is going to comment, but we have our new electronic board in the auditorium, which is exciting. Scoreboard, it's beautiful. We also have a net protecting it, so hopefully it'll last longer. Well, the last one lasted relatively long, but this will protect the new board. And then the majority of our discussion was around facility rental fees and grouping, streamlining our groups. So previously we had multiple groups, so multiple categories for groups that wanted to rent our facilities. We're streamlining that down to 2, but that will take board approval because it affects policy 707. So over the summer, we are going to be going through the process of revamping that policy, so look forward to that, and hopefully have it ready for the fall. That is my report for extracurricular. Facilities, Mr. Case?
Thank you, President Cocker. The Facilities Committee met last Monday, and talked about a whole bunch of different things. I'll talk about the agenda items. We already talked about the Crabtree update that Sean provided. We had the 40-minute version during the facilities meeting, so he did cut that by 10 minutes. One of the great things about the timeline that was also brought up is, if assuming we're going to continue to move forward with this, with the timeline, we would pull some of the winter concerts earlier before the beginning of the construction. And then the last item that came up was with the Wilson Theater Company. There was an impact to their schedule with one of their musicals in the spring that we were looking at. They were looking at outside places locally that they can have that event or that performance, and it seemed like we were making progress towards finding a home. So hopefully the administration is working through, doing a great job working through the impact to the schedules and accommodating all parties. So thank you for that. We talked about the lighting. There was an update for Pro Cleaning Services, a name change to Made to Be Clean. So that was also on our agenda. The LCBC update for the agreement, since it was a long-term item for Sunday mornings, we talked about actually having an agreement because of the timeline that's locked in place. The administration worked with the organization to put some accommodations in there if we need the space on Sundays, and just need to give some notice, and then also to see if things are working well, we'll continue the agreement. If not, we will we have an option of not. So those are the only 2 additional things within that agreement. Talked about the modern fold door in the library earlier, the Macfield update. The turf has been removed and leveled, waiting for the new product to arrive on schedule, which is great. The lower house construction update, the lower house HVAC, doors, tile repair, and paint is on schedule, with tile repair completed on June 14th. Some of the other summer projects are the exterior AED units throughout the district, and removing some walls and doing some office remodeling to better accommodate staffing needs, and adding ADA ramps to Berkshire Heights for accessibility. Some continued progress on the TWG update, which is the vendor for the cameras and the integrated door security access. A grant was written or submitted in May for a federal grant through the COPS grant, and from my understanding, that could be up to $500,000 that we could potentially get. So looking forward to seeing the response to that. President Cocker, you mentioned the Auditorium scoreboard update. I did sneak in the building over the weekend and grabbed a picture of that. It looks great. And talked about the playgrounds. So it was a loaded Facilities Committee, and the next Facilities Committee meeting is, I do not have that date. Could anyone help me out there on the date of the next? We have another board meeting by the time, so I will let the committee know then. Oh, one of the other things I did want to mention on the facilities, if you go to the Wilson website under School Board, Facilities Committee, one of the things Mr. Negrini did talk about earlier were the capital funds review. So that is all within the minutes of the meeting. There is a link to the capital projects that are being looked at for over the horizon and also for over the summer that are budgeted. So if any community members or anyone would like to get a better idea of the capital projects, they are in there well outlined. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Case. Finance Committee, Mr. Negrini.
Now that the budget has been passed, the Finance Department will be working on the audit. So that will be our next major report. We'll be taking a bit of a break with meetings over the summer and then working on an audit report in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Legislative, Mr. Schneider.
Yeah, so in Harrisburg, a budget was finally passed through the House portion of the General Assembly. The funds allotted in that are actually greater than what Governor Shapiro had asked for. It has now moved to the Senate, but as you know, one party controls the House in the state now and one the Senate, so we'll have to see what comes of it.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider. Human Resources, Mr. Hart. He may have dropped off the call. Okay, that's fine. Public Relations, so Mrs. Troutman is not here this evening, but I will share her report. We have one item for Wilson Good News. Sophomore wins first place in the International Science and Engineering Fair. Congratulations to rising Wilson High School's junior, Paige Hinkle, who won first place in the Earth and Environmental Sciences Division at the International Science and Engineering Fair. Paige's project was experiments to determine radon levels in household water and measure the effectiveness of mitigation options. She examined radon levels in areas with high uranium deposits and analyzed mitigation options, practicality, feasibility, and effectiveness. Paige was also featured in a story about her achievement in the June 13th edition of the Reading Eagle. Congratulations, Paige. It's very impressive. And that is the end of Public Relations. Education Foundation, Mr. Case.
Yes, thank you. Everyone remembers from the last meeting, I could barely speak, and so I feel a lot better. And also, there were a couple things I wanted to share. There were several Friday mornings throughout the year that warms my heart every time I go to an Education Foundation meeting, and they're just extremely positive. The folks that are involved in the Education Foundation are fantastic. Everyone means well and is moving in the right direction for Wilson School District. Every now and then we have presentations from students and teachers that kind of go through some of the programs with the venture grants that the Education Foundation provides. So two things I want to share this evening. I do have some pictures. I'll walk up to the podium in a moment. But I'm completely stealing. I asked the teachers to provide their presentations that they gave to the Education Foundation. And everyone was like, hey, I'll come in and present to the board. I was like, please stay home and enjoy your summer. Do not come to the school board meeting. I'll try my best to help out. But one of the things that the Education Foundation didn't fund all of this. There's so much work, and for the first one, the Education Foundation provided lunch to everybody, but it was 1,100 students. During one of the field trips to the Reading Symphony Orchestra. But I just wanted to, but one of the things that was surprising to me is I really didn't have a third or fourth grader involved in the program. I wasn't aware that it happened for the most part. So when it was presented, it was sort of like, this has to be shared with the community, with the rest of the school board, along with one of the programs at Shiloh Hills. So with that being said, I'm going to try and open a PowerPoint and sort of, this is perfect. So you could help me with the slides too. So one of the things that Crystal Jordan, who is a phenomenal teacher at Cornwall Terrace, she's a music teacher, and I actually did some looking up to try and add some commentary to this presentation. She's actually a part of the Reading Symphony Orchestra, an accomplished musician. She took 1,107 students, amongst other teachers, third and fourth grade students, to Peter and the Wolf and filled the arena. So if you go to the next slide, here's all the students that were involved. And by the way, can you raise your hand if you've never heard that students were doing this at all? Everyone knew? Am I the only one that didn't know?
Yeah, I did. I'm a fourth grader.
Wow, okay. I have a fifth grader, so I was not aware of this. But anyway, so I was, nothing. It's the simple things that surprised me. 1,107 students from all 5 elementary schools. Next slide, please. The performance was, Peter and the Wolf is quite a show. The symphony orchestra is in the background, performers. Next slide, please. And the students were just absolutely in awe. I mean, imagine getting 1,100 students on buses going through towards Reading, into the big city and seeing a great performance. Big eyes, some students, I'm sure, many students have never been to a performance such as this. So it's just a wonderful thing. So here's some pictures of the students arriving, lots of questions, dressing up for the event. It's just a phenomenal thing that I wanted to share with the community and everyone here. Here's the eyes of a teacher. If you look at the picture, filling the entire Santander Performing Arts Center with students is quite an accomplishment. And then, again, from the Education Foundation, the help of feeding them as well. Anyway, just what a wonderful experience, and one of the wonderful things that the education helps with, but again, this is mostly teachers and administration, all the support that, that goes into it. So that was one of the feel-good things on a Friday morning before going to work that I learned about. And then another was what we're doing over at Shiloh Hills. Lauren Peterson and Angela Mitzsteifer presented with one of the things that learning outside the classroom at Shiloh Hills. And one of the things that was just was great is what a wonderful outdoor environment, at Shiloh we have within our Wilson community. One of the things that the teachers put together, this was the first annual learning event. There were 571 students on the Shiloh Hills Park and campus, and it was 2.5 hours of learning outside. There were 5 stations of learning, and you can, next slide, please. One of the things, and again, this is one of the teacher's presentation, one of the first things that they pull out your phone and find a memory, of what you experienced that day. Next slide. This was one from Mrs. Pearson, her, just the beauty of what's on our campus, and what is pollination. Next slide. So it was a whole thing about with the students trying to find your inspiration, and there was an overview in the event, planning, stakeholders, a lot of things going into this for the first time. And again, I want to show this because there's such an appreciation for teachers going above and beyond for planning outside of the classroom. Next slide. Next slide. This is the nature path walk. Next slide. So where it all began, we have our district curriculum, community-centered, student-focused, and then aligning with some of our standards, the PA standard aligned steals that. And then from a planning perspective, meeting with teachers, administrators for the ideas, options, plans, setting a date, trying to figure out where people are going to go to the bathroom, the program participants and the needs, looking at the dates, rotating, the safety, volunteers, and then the day of the event on April 14th. Next slide. So this is just some of the considerations and the logistics of trying to put something like this together. Got proof of insurance. Anyway, so to the learning. So there were 5 different workstations or learning stations. There was a solar program, so there were people from the Berks County Astronomical Society that came from the community to teach. There was native pollinators. There were 6 Berks County Master Gardeners that came from the PSU Extension, Penn State Extension Program. Beekeeping, Rich Willingmeyer, who's married to Darcy, who's part of the Education Foundation. He's a local beekeeper. He came out and had a learning station. Next slide, please. There was a guided nature walk, and then also just Berks Nature, where there were skulls and skins and all sorts of things to learn about animals. A couple of pictures. That was from the Astronomical Society, looking at the sun and solar. No one got their eyeballs burned. This was promised. Some other pictures from the PSU or PSU extension program. Next slide. Some of the beekeeping. Next slide. Just the nature walk, and that was from some of the skins and hides and bones and such that the students got to touch and feel. All in all, a great day. And one of the things that was great is this was not a celebration. Mrs. Peterson mentioned that you embed this early before classroom learning, and then it just brings so much more curiosity out of the students when you're actually further learning this in the classroom later on. So it was definitely by design that this wasn't sort of an end-of-the-year, celebration, that it was part of learning. So anyway, raise your hand if you didn't know about this as well. Okay, so good. Couple more people. Anyway, there was one last slide that I wanted to share from the Education Foundation, and that's just that these were announced, two of our Extraordinary Teachers of the Year that will be celebrated at the Education Foundation Bash on September 30th. So congratulations to Jen Richards, Green Valley Elementary School teacher, and Alexandra Fishenich from Wilson High School. And that is my report. Kind of all feel good. I love the Education Foundation and just being a part of the organization. And it's really a great way to start Fridays most of the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Case. Technology Committee, Mr. McCray.
Yes, unfortunately, I have to apologize. I don't have anywhere near the cool visuals that Mr. Case has, but we did meet earlier today and discussed many different items. First of all, one of the items we voted on earlier, the new voice switches that control our phones have reached their end of life. The good news is the cost that we voted on today actually came in under the original estimate, and they will also be self-installed. We discussed many of the new line panels have come in and arrived, and they're being installed across the district. We are going to purchase 12 additional time clocks. As we've discussed in earlier meetings, these are switches from our fingerprint time clocks that we've had recently to the badge time clocks, which have been proven to be more successful. That is looking to be paid out of some of our capital funds. We also reviewed our Chromebook damage stats for the most recent school year. Once again, around a third of our students do purchase the protection plan, which is a great resource if you have some students like mine that tend to drop or otherwise wet soil, whatever it is, to their computers. It's a great way to kind of protect the investment that they made there. The good news is we actually had about 35% less in repair costs this year. Part of that was due that we do have a younger fleet, as you would call it, of Chromebooks across the district, so less issues kind of reported overall, or less cost to us overall, which is a good thing. Finally, we are in the midst of the usual summer projects of projector cleaning, prepping for 300 new laptops for our elementary staff, and also the processing cleaning of all 3,000 of our elementary Chromebooks. So never a dull time in technology. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCray. That's a great reminder about the computer insurance. Not that everybody will remember from now until the start of school year, but it's definitely a good investment. Thank you. Mr. Maravich, do you have your own solicitor? Okay, we do have public participation on non-agenda items.
Attempt at a slight abbreviation, so I'll go right into them. Individuals attending the meeting are expected to conduct themselves in a responsible and respectful manner that does not disrupt the meeting. Public comment is not question and answer, but is instead an opportunity to offer comments on matters that are or may come before the board. Personnel matters or student matters may not be commented on by the board, even if the employee, parent, or student involved is speaking due to confidentiality laws. Questions may be assigned by the superintendent to either administrator, or he will answer them himself after the meeting. All comments are requested by the board to be directed to the body, as it's the body that will eventually need to vote on these. Clapping, calling out, ensuring, and conversations in the audience are not permitted. Comments should be made from the speaker's lectern. Comments are 3 minutes. I will give a warning at 1. Any persons making threats of violence may be removed from the meeting or cited by local police. These expectations are outlined in Policy 903, which is in board docs on the website.
Thank you, Mr. Maravich. First, we have Amy Murray, board members' comments.
Okay, so before you start my time, I want to apologize to everybody for running out of the room because of the mouse. I am terrified. Sorry. Hello, everyone. I wanted to address some of the issues brought up at the last meeting about the election. I, too, was at the poll when the older man stated that he thought all current school board members should be shot. I very quickly jumped in and told him, we don't want hate and none of that kind of talk. As the president of the board was right there with me, I felt compelled to protect her from that, even walking the man away from her to keep her safe. I remember when I came here almost 2 years ago and shared my daughter's story of the division and hate being promoted in her English class. The damage done by the divisiveness being promoted had a very lasting and negative impact on my daughter. I came to you pleading for help. Only one of you, after several meetings, spoke with me. During that time, some of you were saying that not one parent attempted to have a conversation with the teacher. That was a lie. I attempted. The teacher refused to speak with me and wanted my daughter out of her class. I stayed involved so no other child had to go through that again. I have said from day one that I will not participate in the hate. I will not contribute to division. Some of you have spread your own hatred on social media. Some of those that you align with and volunteer on your campaigns have tried to make up lies about me and other candidates running for school board, going as low as falsely accusing candidates of criminal activity. I cannot imagine doing that to anyone, nor would I. Yet I haven't heard anything from you, not any one of you, calling on those people to stop the rhetoric. As I stood there with the president of the school board on election day, I chose to stay true to who I am. I chose to engage in conversation and try to mend some of the division. I chose to share with her our story again, hopeful she might see how desperate we were for help 2 years ago. At one point, she expressed that who I chose to align myself with is a problem. I explained that while they were busy ignoring my concerns, those who I aligned myself with were reaching out and asking how they could help. Those people wrapped their arms around my child
1
and
minute.
supported her. The only side I was choosing was my daughter's and the side of other kids experiencing the same thing. As I said to her that day, it is very possible at the end of this election in November, we will have a mixture of new board members with varying beliefs and ideas. Isn't it time we learn to work together? Isn't it time we change the narrative and show the community how to do it right? Isn't it time we all start listening to one another? You ended last meeting with a series of questions, and I have a couple of my own. You stated you are not encouraging boys to play on girls' teams. If a biological male transitioning to female wants to play on girls' athletics teams, will you allow them? Does or will Wilson allow biological males in our girls' bathrooms at any of their schools? As I close, I will leave you with one thing to think about. Would you have stood up for me that day? Would you have protected me from an angry community member?
Thank you for your comments. Val Delp, respectful community engagement.
Good evening. Respectful community engagement is something I think we can all agree that we would like to see more of in Wilson. I want to believe that we live in a community where we can have more productive conversations even when we have opposing views. And I know it can be done if we can set the emotions aside and just listen. It was brought up at the last meeting, someone in the community made a threat of violence on election day, and I think it's safe to say that everyone in this room condemns that kind of rhetoric. It's hard to say whether that man had any real pulse on the activities of our local school board or was venting frustrations from national news headlines. However, this behavior is more of a societal problem, and I'm not sure why a choice was made to spend a large portion of the meeting focused on this when the board has many more important things to be working on. It isn't a school director's job to change the moral compass of the community. Your job is to work together to selflessly serve all of the customers of this school district, the children, the teachers, the staff, the parents, and the taxpayers. I've spent a considerable amount of time over the last 2 years speaking with many former and current Wilson teachers and staff, parents of Wilson students, students themselves, and other community members with a connection to the district. And overwhelmingly, most are very proud of the Wilson School District and grateful for the experiences that it has provided. However, some also had some concerns and areas in which they felt the district could improve. Through these thousands of conversations, themes started to arise. First being teachers, staff, and students who spoke about repeat discipline issues disrupting classrooms with consequences that are not reducing the behaviors and also taking away from valuable educational instruction time. Another one is teachers and parents with concerns that kids in the elementary and middle school levels are falling behind in basic skills in math and English. And a third is parents worried about the safety of their daughters.
1 minute.
They might have to share a bathroom or compete against biological males. These aren't issues that we created. We listened over and over again to the customers of this school district, sharing their real experiences. And when you dismiss them rather than listening to understand, you create resentment and division. I think as a sitting board member, it is always important to be willing to listen to the experiences of everyone, both positive and negative, in order to make Wilson a district that continues to retain and attract quality teachers and appeals to all families. To simply say everything is fine and to stay the course when concerns are being brought to light is irresponsible, when there are areas where Wilson can strive to do better. There is a saying in business that if you fail to improve, then you are falling behind. I don't think any of us wants Wilson or our children to fall behind. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Chastity Santiago.
All right, well, I am not in the business of being nice as those two young ladies there. I wanted to talk about the final minutes of the last school board meeting, and I'm going to try to do so with a straight face, but I got to be honest, it was ripe with comedy, so I can't promise you anything. I cannot think of anyone more unqualified to launch a campaign to combat misinformation, lack of information, rumors, and lies than our own Dr. Kennedy. And I struggle to understand how our board president was surprised that there is negative reaction out there in the community. Are you not paying attention during these meetings? I don't understand what's going on but what were the important issues last week? So the community, there's community members that feel negative about the school board. Oh my God, shocking. But the worst of all is that you conveniently left out how it was candidate Amy Murray who de-escalated the situation. Sadly, not shocking. We confirmed that there's a process in place for sexual teacher misconduct that doesn't include re-education camp funding. Well, duh. And we also confirmed no kitty litter in our bathroom. Seriously, I'm trying not to be mean, but I just can't understand if they're giving out doctorates and Cracker Jack boxes anymore, because that question is just dumb. So, and also we said we're currently not encouraging boys to play on girls' sports team. Keywords there, community, currently not encouraging. No stance, no regular answer, just currently not encouraging. So you guys, you insult this community last week by taking all that time on these serious issues, but is a cowardly deflection to avoid the horrible truth of what's going on. We had parents on November 14th, 2023, multiple parents citing instances of racial and intimidation and incidents, and zero reports of those incidents on the school safety dashboard for Pennsylvania that is available to the public dating back to 2010. We have Amy Kennedy throwing out accusations on social media, calling members of this community book burners. Then she goes out and calls them and tells people that we want guns in school. I'm sorry, you're inciting hate and you're causing division. And there's nothing out there to substantiate those claims. There is not one person that said that.
1 minute.
We're contracting services and paying $140,000 over 3 years with an organization whose DEI statement is to challenge the influence of white supremacy. I don't think we have that problem here. The real problem is before new members joined, when it was just Martin, Hart, and Negrini, we were number 1 in math. We were number 1 in English. We were number 2 in science, number 2 in grade 3 reading, and in grade 7 math. You know what? We're 10 or 12 in all of them now. Do we not care? I just don't understand What, kitty litter, really? That's what our focus is? And for anybody that's interested, the kitty litter is in this bag, not in the bathroom.
Thank you for your comments. Lisa Marie Stoneha, campaign comments.
Imagine being so afraid of having to work with people who might view things a little bit differently, that rather than stepping up as a leader, you work twice as hard to take them down. That is exactly what happened with some of the candidates running this past election. And to say that some in this community were downright ugly in their actions is an understatement. Many of our volunteers were screamed at during Election Day, and the loudest screamer was a current board member. On Election Day, I received several calls from different community members that this current board member was screaming and attacking voters and volunteers. In fact, this board member became so unhinged that we had to make a standing rule to have 2 people at the polls she worked to protect our volunteers. During the campaign, one potential candidate even decided to reach out to harass one of our tenants, meaning myself and my husband's tenant, as we placed our candidate sign on our property that we owned, as they rent a portion of the building. This candidate not only yelled at this candidate, but threatened a Wilson contract if they did not take down the sign that was on our property. This is also the same candidate who called our supporters to yell at them for posting their support on our candidate's Facebook posts. A current board member who is running for re-election reached out to me through direct messaging not once but 3 separate times, demanding I post their content on a Facebook group that I run. This candidate has their own page, but stated that, quote, their expectation was that I do what they say. The next thing I'm going to show you, I need to warn you that what I'm going to show you is disturbing. Our signs were vandalized with hate. Imagine explaining, because your school bus driver had to explain this to my daughter's school bus, what this was. Another board member and a current teacher decided to take to Facebook and post lies about my 10-year-old daughter and why she was no longer attending Wilson. Neither one of them were involved in her situation last year, but both spoke as if they were experts. Thanks to these posts, my daughter was attacked on 4 separate occasions by community members screaming at her.
1 minute.
One was an attempt at her new school. How did they find out about her new school? Well, this board member recklessly posted where she goes to school. This school board member and this teacher were so blinded with hate that they knowingly put a 10-year-old child, a former student, in danger, and no regard to her safety. This is just a small example of what I can fit in 3 minutes of what our candidates and their families put up with during the election. Their families, children, grandchildren, and friends were repeatedly harassed because of hateful misinformation and fear spread by a select few bullies. I personally want to thank Val, Amy, Cindy, Keegan, and Craig for continuing to stand up to these bullies and for standing up for our kids. They pushed through and did what was right and ran a great, clean campaign. As a community, we're lucky to have individuals who are willing to step up and do what is right. And my hope is that going forward, these bullies can focus on their own campaigns and candidates and run a clean campaign. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Craig Stoneha, general comments.
That's some hard stuff to follow up, but I as well would like to talk about the comments from 2 weeks ago. Some of those topics discussed at the end of the board meeting, I feel they need a little bit more focus. A number of broad comments were made regarding the community as a whole about just the spread of misinformation and the anger, like a lot of people have said tonight. I agree with those comments. There is a lot of misinformation out there, and there does appear to be a lot of unwarranted and misplaced anger. I had a story that I had no intention of speaking about prior to 2 weeks ago, but after the last meeting, it now seems relevant. I was at a poll during the primaries, and an elderly couple approached. They claimed to have seen urinals in the girls' lavatory at the high school. It's not kitty litter, but it's something, I guess. I told them I've never heard of anything like that at Wilson, and I'm in the school fairly often. I've never seen anything like that at Wilson, but if they wanted to give me their information, I'd help put them in contact with somebody at the administration that could help out and answer questions. They declined and moved on. There was another candidate there. They never said a word. I assumed that we were in lockstep, and we agreed on that, and that was the end of it until minutes later, A sitting school board member pulled up to the pole and approached me very aggressively, yelling in my face, calling me a liar, and proceeding to make up a new version of events that was in no way related to the truth. This all happened in front of multiple witnesses. All of the drama stemmed from a board member not fact-checking a false narrative. I mean, is this the type of misinformation that we're trying to address? I have here, this is a fun one, Facebook post that somebody else brought up, but of a sitting board member calling community members book burners and creating a fake narrative about that. In fact, I found out that it became so pervasive, people were contacting local law enforcement to find out where the books were being burned and exactly which books were being burned. I mean, is that the type of misinformation that we're trying to stop? I also have here, I have an invented story written by a sitting board member that was brought up earlier about community members trying to place guns in our classrooms. I can't find a single piece of evidence that anyone suggested that course of action in Wilson, but I guess, is that the type of misinformation that we're referring to?
1 minute.
It was stated at the last meeting that reaching out to people and communication is the only way to combat misinformation, and I agree. In fact, a colleague of mine approached a few board members 2 weeks ago after their comments, and they were very vocal to try to discuss these topics, and she was dismissed. I don't think that's the type of communication that we're shooting for. I would imagine that we all agree on a great many things, but this anger and this hypocrisy and this need for drama has to stop if we're ever going to advance this conversation. As board members, you're leaders. These are leadership positions. And I shouldn't direct that to all of you because some of you are phenomenal. But if you can't handle that, for those of you that are having a hard time, step down. It's fine. Somebody will fill your place. It'll work out. But otherwise, step up. Act the part. Do your job. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Jack Wirt, misinformation.
Hello. I would like to further the comments that Craig Stonehaw made in the fact that there were several witnesses regarding a sitting school board member verbally assaulting him. I can confirm I was a witness there at Haynes Church Poll, roughly 10 a.m. on Election Day, where a sitting school board member did come screaming at him. It was brutal. That behavior is, quite frankly, embarrassing for any functional adult, especially one in an elected position of government. And as a voter, I can't say I'd like to see that behavior encouraged. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And that's the end of public participation on non-agenda items. I will open the conversation to the board for further topics. Dr. Kennedy? Mr. Martin, one moment, please.
I just want to make the point that when you tell the truth, you don't have to whisper. You don't have to turn your back. When you don't talk about people behind their back, when you're not talking negative about a person, when you're given factually accurate information, you don't have to whisper. I stand by everything that I've done on this board, and I'm super proud of the work that we've done over the last 5 years. I think we've done it with grace. I think we've done it under pressure. I think we've passed a wonderful budget that is fair on both sides. I think that we care about our students. I think we have a wonderful administration, and we have amazing teachers. I want to talk specifically about our support staff. I know if we had unlimited funds, they are the angels of the school district. We would pay them what they're worth, which is a whole lot more than what we can afford to pay them. The school bus drivers are the first people the kids see in the day. Patrick's school bus comes at 6:35 in the morning, and the girls on his bus are amazing. Like, they make me smile, and it's hard to make me do anything at 6:35 in the morning. To the secretaries, administrative assistants that greet our students at the door, and our custodians, Mr. John, he's famous. I had a Mr. John growing up in my elementary school that I'll never forget. To our classroom aides, they're so wonderful. They're doing God's work every day for not a whole lot of money. to our custodian, I did custodians, who else am I missing? The food service workers who are hilarious and probably take the brunt of a lot of student comments unnecessarily, because I know my kids are picky. I can imagine there's a lot of picky eaters out there. We just have such a wonderful support staff, and I think this district is just top-notch, and I have never been prouder to be part of anything. And I just want every employee from all of the employee groups to understand and know how much I appreciate them. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Kennedy. Other business from the board?
Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Martin, thank you, forgot. Go
Just
ahead.
real quick, on the state budget, the extra $1 billion that was passed by the House has no chance of getting through the budget. The basis for that increase was that there was excess funds this year that they could possibly allocate to schools, but be a one-time affair. So there's danger in that. First of all, there's danger because you know what happens. You get that money, you spend it on stuff that's not reoccurring. But the chances of that getting through are slim and none. Unfortunately, there's going to be obviously a vote in the Senate, and there'll be some type of compromise. But overall, we will get more money than we budgeted for. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Mrs. Casper?
Yes, thank you, President Cocker. I just wanted to clarify a couple things. I think the comments that were brought up at the last meeting at the end were in an effort to correct some of the misinformation and correct some of the false narrative of what the board does and what we stand for. And just to clarify, it is part of our job as board members to influence and to direct the district's climate. And I think the drastic details of what was said, I think, really forced us to have to make that correction. And I think it's an important part of our job as school board members to make sure that we are influencing a positive climate for the district, not just within our schools, but in the community as well. So I just wanted to make that clarification. But I also wanted to draw attention to today. Today is June 19th, and it is Juneteenth. It's an essential holiday in the United States as it commemorates the emancipation of enslaved African Americans. And on June 19th in 1865, soldiers arrived in Galveston, Texas, and proclaimed that all enslaved people were free. And this was 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. Juneteenth represents a pivotal moment in American history, symbolizing the end of slavery and the ongoing struggle for equality and civil rights. Celebrating Juneteenth allows us to honor the resilience, the strength, and contributions of African Americans throughout American history. It serves as a reminder of the progress that we've made in the fight against slavery and systemic racism, while acknowledging the work that still needs to be done to achieve full equality. Teaching African American history is crucial for many reasons. First and foremost, it helps to correct the historical narratives that have often been overlooked or marginalized the experiences and achievements of African Americans. By learning about their rich heritage and contributions, all people can develop a more comprehensive understanding of American history. Moreover, teaching African American history fosters empathy, cultural appreciation, and a sense of unity among different racial and ethnic groups. It provides an opportunity to recognize the struggles, the resilience, and achievements of African Americans, cultivating a more inclusive and diverse society. It's also important to note that it was only recently recognized as a national holiday in 2021. However, it has been celebrated by many prior to this. It's been a state holiday, for example, in Texas since 1980. Understanding African American history is also vital for addressing systemic racism and promoting social justice today. By examining the historical context and the enduring impact of slavery and racial discrimination, all individuals can better grasp the structural inequities that continue to persist today. This knowledge is crucial for advocating for meaningful change, combating racial bias, and creating a more equitable society. Additionally, studying African American history helps to empower African American students and other students who may experience systemic discrimination by providing them with a sense of identity, pride, and belonging. When students see themselves reflected in the curriculum, it can enhance their self-esteem and motivation and lead to more improved academic outcomes. So by promoting a more inclusive understanding of our history, of our American history, we can work toward creating a more just and equitable society for all. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Casper. That was a wonderful reminder of today's holiday, and I think previously one of the comments from the public was in relation to Wilson, us saying that everything's perfect and we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. I know that we share a lot of positive news, like good news, but that doesn't mean that we don't understand that there are things that, are challenges that we need to fix. And I think that kind of goes along with Juneteenth, too. So obviously, that's a celebration. It's a celebratory day, but it doesn't mean that everything's perfect. So there are still plenty of areas for improvement. But happy Juneteenth to all that in our country that celebrate. So other business from the board? Okay, looking for a motion to adjourn.
Schneider, so
So
moved.
moved.
Mr. Schneider, thank you. Adjourned.